Welcome to the Brain Picker Pro Show, live from Lake Wiley, South Carolina. I'm Larry Goins. Thanks again for watching. Really appreciate it. And if it's your first time, welcome. Each week we interview a different person who is a mover and a shaker. They know what they're doing. I bring you guys the best of the best. It might be a speaker, an author, a trainer, might be somebody just in the trenches, somebody flying under the radar. But today we've got a great special guest, and I am really excited to have him on. Jarrod Irby is a guy who is crushing it in a small market. He's from L.A., that's Lower Alabama, right? So please give a warm welcome to Jarrod. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, not too much, Larry. Appreciate you having me on today.
Man, thanks a lot for coming on. I really appreciate it. Why don't you start out and tell the viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself? Who is Jarrod?
Yeah, so personally, I have two little girls, great girlfriend. Kind of do what I want to do, live life the way I want to live, and it's all been through real estate, and so that's pretty awesome. But as far as our real estate company goes, our company's IRBY Homebuyers. We're based, like you said, in Lower Alabama, which is kind of Mobile and Baldwin County on the Gulf Coast here. And we do, close to 150 deals a year, wholesale, fix and flips, own rental properties, and even kind of dabble in some commercial properties and multifamily stuff as well. So that's just kind of a little bit about our business.
That's awesome, man. You do 150 deals a year in a small market.
Yeah, it's pretty small. It's probably, less than 600,000 people in the whole metro area between two counties.
That's awesome. So you're marketing in two different counties to do all your business.
Correct. They're pretty, they're kind of, it's a little spread out, but they're basically one kind of metro area for the sake of argument. A lot of people live in one county and work in the other, that kind of thing.
Right. Like a single MSA, but you kind of go outside of that a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, cool. So tell us, what does your business look like? You do 150 deals a year. Is it wholesaling, fix and flip, landlording primarily?
Sure. So as far as the IRBY Homebuyers goes, the residential side, and I actually have it's called the IRBY group of companies to kind of encompass the multifamily and the commercial stuff as well. But on the residential side, kind of speaking to your listeners, out of those 150 deals, it's probably 70-75% we wholesale to other investors. But we actually do take title to them. So it's kind of a lot of double closings and things like that. On the fix and flip side, it's probably the balance of our transactions are kind of split between buying rentals for our own portfolio and then fix and flips.
Okay. All right. Good. So you take title to most of your properties. Why do you do that?
Well, in Alabama, it's or at least in our counties, there's no transfer tax on a deed. So to do a double closing is not significantly more expensive, maybe $100 or so. And then we get to stay in control of the whole process. And we're also on the chain of title, which kind of, is important, in some aspects with wholesaling, I think, as far as just not being any kind of a broker situation. So that's mostly why we do it. But the biggest reason is we just like to stay in control of the buy side and the sell side. Because when you assign a contract, it works out 99% of the time, but occasionally it can go sideways with a buyer and a seller. So we just like to kind of stay in control of it ourselves.
That's so true. I mean, there's certain times to use an assignment and there's certain times to use a buy-sell, two separate closings, right?
Yeah, sure. If we're assigning, we'll assign a contract for $1,000 or $2,000 or something like that. We don't do that very often, but when we do, we'll just assign that and not worry about it. But on our bigger, nicer, normal deals, we want to be kind of in control of the whole process, which I think is important because our sales reps are the ones going out, talking to the customers initially and everything anyways, and then, you're throwing another element into the equation when you have the investor come in and start dealing with the seller. We just like to stay in control of the whole process from start to finish.
Right. That makes sense. That really does. And it keeps your seller and buyer from knowing what you're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And to us, that's probably not the biggest thing because we're in a disclosure state. So it's pretty easy to see after the fact what happened, and kind of figure out what our fee was. And we have a lot of repeat buyers. So that's not really been the biggest issue. The biggest issue is just, this is a people business, right? And when there's people involved, a lot can go wrong. So, we have the relationship with the buyer, we have the relationship with the seller. So we kind of want to stay in control of that at all times. And just, a buddy of mine that's a broker that got me in my first couple deals, 10, 12 years ago, was like, I'm never going to let you meet a seller at the closing table. I'm staying in the middle of all of it. And, it's kind of a valid point. You kind of keep the buyer and the seller separate, even at the closing table in a lot of cases, just because you want to get as much little friction as possible. So
there you go. That's good. So you're doing about 10 to 15 deals a month, it sounds like. So what does your team look like? Do you mind sharing that?
Sure. And we're kind of gunning for 250 deals this year. So we've been, I think we did, we're on track to close. I think we have 15 or 16 closings already set up for March. So we're kind of on a good trajectory right now. But
awesome.
As far as our team goes, we have 2 lead managers that kind of intake leads, follow up on leads, that kind of thing. We have 2 acquisition reps that actually go out on appointments, meet with sellers, determine motivation, and basically give them some options where we can, purchase the house. Then we've got a disposition manager that handles selling all of our wholesale deals, but he also handles kind of coordinating the closings on even the ones we buy in-house. And he has an assistant as well. I've got a great COO, Ren Bartlett, who basically runs the whole operation. He actually came from a marketing and advertising background. He was running a marketing company, that sold advertising and marketing products to local businesses.
Right.
So he's real familiar with kind of the business that we do. And then on top of that, we've got a couple of, maintenance guys and construction workers that handle some of our rentals. And then we sub everything out to a property management company. And we've also got a couple of assistants that kind of help us with bookkeeping and things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much our team. I think we got about 12 folks.
Good. That's awesome. I like that.
And then actually, I forgot to mention one person who's really important. We also have a director of sales that came on board about 3 months ago. He oversees basically all of the sales for the acquisition reps, and also kind of we have some expansion plans to go out into some surrounding markets around us as well. So he's kind of heading that part up.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're doing that many deals with 2 acquisition managers, and they actually go to the house and get the contract signed in person in front of the seller.
Yeah, I mean, we do occasionally buy them over the phone if it's an out-of-town seller or something like that. We bought plenty over the phone, but we like to go face-to-face. I mean, I think that there's a lot to be said with that. This is a really large transaction. And, I know there's a lot of people that do virtual wholesaling and stuff like that, and it can certainly make a lot of money, but our business model is set up to kind of go more face-to-face and buy really, really deep and get really amazing deals.
That's awesome. I love it. I'm taking notes, man. What does your average deal look like?
Well, we're in a market where you can buy a $5,000 house or a $500,000 house. And, so it's kind of, it's hard to say that there's an average, but, our normal bread and butter deal is probably a house that an investor, if we're looking at the wholesale side, is probably a house that an investor is going to want to be in, 50, 60 grand to rent out. Essentially, that we sell a lot to investors that want to rent properties.
Right.
It probably would need a $15,000 renovation. So we would try to be in that house for, to make a, $10,000 profit or so. So we would probably, if they got to be in it for 60, they're buying it from us for, mid 40s. We're locking it up, in the low 30 range. And that's kind of a pretty typical, a typical wholesale deal for us. The fix and flips, we like to kind of stay with the bread and butter brick slab house. There's not really any basements here, so we're looking for brick slab,
right.
Kind of ranches, 1970s and above in a good neighborhood. We'll do those ourselves. Anything else, we kind of look and if it's in a worse neighborhood, but that type of house, I usually keep it as a rental myself. We try to buy 1 or 2 a month for my own personal rental portfolio, and kind of use the BRRRR strategy to acquire those. And then we wholesale to keep the lights on and keep the machine moving.
That's good, man. That's really good. I love it. What Jarrod's talking about with the BRRRR method is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, right?
Yeah, lots of times. So
that's it. Good. So, so it sounds like most of your wholesale buyers are landlords. Is that a good?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. We do sell to quite a few flippers, and our marketing strategy is pretty aggressive on the wholesale side too. So we actually do sell to quite a few, I would call them retail investors, or even retail buyers. Maybe somebody who's going to do a live-in flip or something like that. The numbers work, better for them on a flip than they do for us.
Right.
So we do sell a lot of 1s and 2s, to onesie twosie kind of investors. And then we've got a couple of buyers that are, are doing flips on a pretty large scale. That the fix and flip isn't something that is my forte. I have a sales and marketing background, so I really like to focus on kind of building things bigger as opposed to actually doing the fix and flips myself. But then other folks, love that, and so that's kind of who our buyer is. So it's probably a third is fix and flip, and the rest is the investors looking to actually purchase it and use it as a rental.
That's cool. Good. Where do you get most of your deals? I mean, I know you got 2 lead managers that are intaking leads when the calls come in, calling people back. I'm assuming they're setting appointments for your acquisition guys. What makes your phone ring?
Well, so that's kind of one of the hard things about being in a small market. If I was in a large market, you figured out PPC, boom, you've got one lead channel, that can produce you enough deals to sustain.
Right.
There's cold calling or whatever. But we're in a market where we kind of have to take pretty massive action to be able to get to get deals. So I mean, when we're talking marketing, we're doing tons of direct mail. We're doing cold calling. We're doing knocking on doors. Doing a lot of list stacking type stuff where we're really dialing in and seeing who's on multiple lists, and we're directly contacting those people. We're also doing pay-per-clicks. We're doing social media advertising, bandit signs, and then we get a ton of referrals from local agents as well, which has been a great source of business. When they have a customer that they're trying to list a house that the house either couldn't sell or it's in really rough shape, or they don't really have the heart to tell them that the $100,000 house is only worth 20. We'll kind of break the heart ourselves and let the agent off the hook on that, and then pay them a referral fee when we end up buying the house. So there's it's a pretty large funnel, and leads are coming from a lot of different directions all at once.
That's really good. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of direct mail.
We do probably 40, 50,000 pieces a month at the moment.
Wow, that's huge. And I thought I did a lot of direct mail. I've been doing 25,000, and we're getting ready to bump that up to 37.5 next month.
Yeah, and we're actually cutting back on the direct mail. We've seen our response rates over the last year drop significantly, and so we're trying to dial into more, weed out some of the folks that would never sell to us off of that list. So we're trying to do some data analytics to figure out who do we have no chance of buying from ever. Let's go ahead and get them off the list and not mail to them. So we're kind of doing a little bit of research like that right now and really paring our list down. We were up to 60, 70,000 pieces a month at one point.
Wow.
So we've kind of dialed it back for sure.
Yeah, that's a lot. Now you mentioned list stacking a minute ago. Can you explain to the viewers and listeners what list stacking is and maybe how you go about doing that?
Sure. So basically, we want to see this is somebody on a vacant property list that's also on a senior citizen list. or did they also not pay their taxes, right? If that person checks all three of those boxes, boom, it's, they need us, right?
Right.
So what we want to do is focus more instead of just sending a postcard to 50,000 people, we want to send a postcard to the, 40,000 people, but dial into the 10,000 people and go touch them in a much deeper way with like handwritten letters and things like that, to really get to those people directly that need our assistance. So it's basically looking at who's on different lists to identify who has the most motivation. So all of those things I consider motivation factors. And really, frankly, that's the only reason somebody would ever sell a house to you or me or any investor that kind of does what we do, is because they're motivated to, for some reason. It might not be about the money, but there's some situation that's motivating them, whether it's the county, sending them, notice of violations on their for their grass being too high, or they've got a bad tenant, or whatever it is. There's got to be some motivation factor for them to sell at a discount. So we're trying to identify people that have multiple motivation indicators, essentially, and then target those people more directly. So if they show up on all of their lists, we're just going and knocking on their door,
That's awesome. I love it. Now, do you have a specialty list you buy, or you just look them up for yourself at list somewhere like ListSource or something?
Yeah, so we use ListSource probably like everybody else to get data, and all that kind of stuff. We pull different criteria, things like that. But then we're getting a lot of records ourselves, like divorce cases and probates and stuff like that, where we're actually having to like go to the county courthouse, and get this information, and it's pretty tedious and
Right.
and kind of a program that we've just started in the last few months rolling out, and we're starting to see some good results off of it, and being able to reduce some of our spends a little bit. But for us, I think it's important because we're trying to go really, really deep, and we're definitely the biggest player as far as the residential, investor in our market goes. But we think that there's still a lot of low hanging fruit there to get up. And this is one of those things. If I was just getting started, one thing that I'm seeing really work well is that agent referral network. That is, yeah, it's easy. It's no investment. In fact, I just had an agent text me 2 minutes before we got on the show here and say, "Hey, I sent you 2 people last month. I need my check. The transaction's just closed. I want my check." That's the happiest $1,500 we'll ever write, because we make probably $30,000 on between both of those deals, and we owe her $1,500 a piece. So $3,000 to make 30, and I pay after the fact. It's kind of a no-brainer there. If I would have known how effective that agent referral was ahead of time, I would have worked that angle a lot harder and invested less money on marketing to begin with, because we're getting 4 or 5 deals a month from agents now, and I think that could be 10 or 15 if we had been working it really hard for the last few years.
That's awesome, man. I love that. Do you use a service to do your list stacking, or is that something you do internally?
Yeah, we use a company called Property List Manager to do our list stacking, but then we have some custom tools written to kind of fill in some gaps that it doesn't have, and so I kind of have a little bit of a coding background, and so I've worked with some developers to make some software to kind of help us out in generating those lists. So it can get a little complicated on that side, but if I'm just getting started, my first list I just bought on ListSource and dropped some postcards and get going. So it's more about massive action, which is kind of one of the core values of our company. It's probably the biggest, most important one is just taking massive action to get out after your goals and just get started.
That's really cool, Jarrod. You have a really cool team, man. I like the sound of what you're doing. It's very impressive. Are all your people virtual, or do you have an office everybody goes to?
So I would love, I know a lot of investors have it virtual and they have low overhead and this and that. That's not really how I run it. We have a nice office in the downtown area, and, throw big parties and have lots of events and have a cool culture. And, we have a gong that we ring every time we close a deal. We have every single person, comes to the office every day for a daily sales meeting. And it's a little old school, but I think it's really, really effective because it really creates a team atmosphere. And then we've kind of hired a team of competitors as well. And those type of folks really feed off of each other's energy. And I think it's important to have those folks, be together as much as possible. And so that's kind of why we've, not gone the virtual route.
Man, I'm smiling because I love what you're saying. That's exactly what we do, right? We've got a bell hanging on the wall. Anytime we close a deal, we ring the bell and everybody in the office claps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we make sure to ring the gong when everybody's on the phone too. It's even better then.
I know, right?
And
what just happened? Hey,
we just bought another one.
We just bought another house from somebody and helped them and got them cash. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think it's great. Everybody feeds off of the energy. It's kind of the law of attraction stuff, which I used to think was kind of cheesy and everything. A long time ago, I watched The Secret, thought it was kind of cheesy. But I've really gotten into it the last year or two, and I think that people feed off of the energy that you throw off. And so, we try to have that really cool team culture and the cool competitive vibe, and everybody's kind of always in a little competition with each other in some way. And, we're just having fun and having a good time. And I think customers feed off of that too. And our buyers feed off of it, and the agents we work with feed off of it. And it really just kind of creates this really interesting dynamic that has really helped us propel.
That's really cool, man. So what are some of the things that your cold callers do? Are your cold callers the same as your two lead managers, or do you have different cold callers?
So yeah, we've actually kind of toned down the cold calling over the last month or two and kind of focused on the list stacking. Although it was effective, but it's just a little bit more management. We had some virtual people in the Philippines doing that, and they had a script and a list and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just a little bit more to manage. And so we're trying to look for low-hanging fruit where we can do some automated things to kind of generate business without us having to work as hard for it. So we've kind of toned that down. Doing it again, if I was getting started, yeah, I absolutely would. And I would probably, you kind of have to use overseas folks for that. I've heard that there's a couple US-based kind of operations that are doing well, but I would think that that's kind of a numbers game. You got to talk to a lot of people, and so you can't pay a lot to make that happen.
You got to keep your hourly low.
Yeah, you really do. It's kind of and also, they're a little more used to working long, hard hours like that. I mean, I used to own a couple call centers and was in that business for a long time. In fact, that's how I kind of got into real estate. Was I was making money from that and started buying real estate.
Right.
And it's a tough job, man. You can't put somebody on the phone 8 hours a day and expect them not to come shoot you up, shoot everybody up at the office, right? Like it's not a fun job. And, so, that's another reason why we're not doing it as much now is I just didn't feel like we could have fun with that because it's just it's a grind, a really big grind. And so, but the key to it is good data, making sure you're calling the right people, you have good data on them. So skip tracing is really important. And then having a good script that's not really intrusive. You can't just call up and say, hey, I want to buy your house. You kind of have to ease in the back door a little bit better and really focus on, seeing if there's any motivation or just planting the seed in general. It's kind of a long-term sell. When somebody goes to our website off of a PPC campaign, we're buying that thing 30, 40% of the time, right? But on a cold call lead, it's hundreds of leads to get a deal, because it's just such a long process. And so that's kind of what we're looking at. Same thing, agent referrals, we're closing 30, 40, % of those, because those are motivated qualified folks that are coming to us. So you just kind of have to approach the sales process differently. And it's more of like a long-term drip and you continuous follow-up campaign until they build up that motivation that they need to sell it to you for 40, 50 cents on the dollar.
There you go. That makes sense. That does make sense. I like it. I like it. So you mentioned you got a couple of acquisition people. One of the biggest challenges that I've found is finding really good acquisition people, because you need somebody that knows a little bit about real estate to be able to pull comps, but they got to be a closer. You need somebody that's a hammer closer, in my opinion, right?
Oh yeah, no
How do you find your guys?
Yeah, so team building has been extremely important to us, and I kind of mentioned our core values before, but this is kind of how we approached it. In that we really wanted to set our core values to make sure that we're getting the right kind of people to begin with, and we're kind of living in the right way. So ours is team first, massive action, positivity, honesty, integrity, and complete domination, right? And those aren't like kind of cheesy ones you put on the wall and, for everybody to see. Those are ones that like we want to recruit people that fit all of those values. So, when we were really intentional about setting those core values and kind of putting off the vibes to the whole community and everything we do. Funny things start happening. Those kind of people come to you, and it's really neat. Like, I'm sure you have a lot of energy and you kind of do a lot of cool stuff. You probably just have people that kind of have just come to you and you're not even really sure how it happened. Right. And it's really the same way with us, is that, we're kind of putting out these vibes of that we want competitors, right? All of those are very competitive, kind of qualities that people have. And so once we know what we're looking for in a lead manager or in an acquisition manager, we're calling, 10, 20, 30 people in our network and saying, hey, we're looking for this person. Do you know who it is? That kind of thing. And so a lot of our folks have come through my network and the other employees' networks and things like that. It might be a friend of a friend of a friend, but it's kind of coming more organically. Of course, we're running ads and things like that too, Indeed, and I think we use WiseHire. And then even once we have a referral, we're still sending them through a personality test, which I think is really, really important. We use the DISC test, and we used to use Culture Index, and we've used a couple other things. But it's really important to make sure that, you're not putting an accountant in a salesperson's seat, right? And when somebody needs a job, they're going to say whatever it takes in that interview to get the job, but when push comes to shove, if you don't have the right person in the right seat, you're going to have some serious issues. And so you need a closer, and you've got to have people that can do that. And that's a certain personality type, right? I have that personality type. You probably have that personality type, but not everybody does. And, and probably a very small percentage of the population does. So that personality test helps us really weed out people. And we don't even interview them if the personality profile doesn't match up with the known personality profile of of the position we're looking for. So that's really easy way to, make the cut there. And then we want people who have been in sales before, but not necessarily any real estate sales. Because I kind of believe once you've gone to one of the big normal brokerages, they kind of have you drink the Kool-Aid, and so to speak. And it's hard to get that out of your mind. I've seen some former realtors become investors, but I've very rarely seen realtors make good, employees in an investment business like we have. And so we're trying to stay away from people who actually have real estate experience so we can teach them the way we want to do it. But I really like folks that have some kind of business to consumer sales. We've hired some business to business sales reps, didn't work out. And I thought they would, because they're professional, dressed nice, hustlers. They're willing to make 1 million calls a day, but that B2B sell is completely different than the B2C sell. So we have folks that, one of our top reps, she was a furniture salesman, and so, really knows talking to people and knows how to sell them high priced goods too, so that's important. Our other guy was a bird dog kind of guy for a big fire damage insurance attorney here that, gets, they basically, he would go out to fire claims and basically do adjusting for an attorney, but basically get clients for the attorney essentially. So, I mean, you're talking about, somebody who's really used to working with consumers in distress and analyzing properties as well. And all of those came from our personal networks, friend of friend, or in fact, this one guy, the fire claim guy, had called on me for a fire claim that we had trying to get our business over to him, over to his attorney. And we ended up going with him. They got us a huge check. And so I was like, hey man, we gotta make this official, and so, it kind of comes in a lot of ways. But the biggest thing is really putting out the vibes of what you're looking for, knowing what your expectations are, and not settling for the first person that comes around.
That's a really, really good point. I totally agree with you that the person you hire needs to be a closer. They need to be a good salesperson.
Yeah, I agree. And I think right people in the right seats is important, because when I started, it was just me. Really quickly, I brought an assistant in, and, the last thing that I ever gave up was going and closing deals. That was literally the last position that I hired for, because that's what I'm good at. I know I can go close. So I think also hiring, really knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are is really important. Like being really honest with yourself. Like, I'm extremely good with math, but if I'm really honest with myself, I am the worst financial manager, bookkeeper there is, right? Like I just literally the worst. But I'm also kind of cocky and confident enough to think that I'm probably better than everybody else. But if you really sit down and and evaluate your real strengths and weaknesses, it kind of makes hiring easier. You want to hire people that, that fill in those weaknesses so that you can really focus on your strengths and you don't go trying to change your weaknesses. I think that's really important, is not trying to change. Like there's no way I'm ever going to be a good bookkeeper, right? So why would I ever learn that? Right. I need to focus on what I'm really good at, which is closing deals. And so I want to kind of hire people that kind of fill those gaps in for me as well.
That's cool. That's cool. So how do you train your guys to figure out what the ARV is and the amount of repairs? Or do you have somebody that does that before they go out to the house?
Yeah, so that's kind of black magic, right? Like,
right?
Yeah, especially in a small market. That's probably one thing, if I'm being honest, we really struggle with, is knowing what this damn thing is worth, right? Like, in a larger market that's more fluid, it's probably easier. You could probably just look at Zillow, and I know it sucks, but it's probably at least what everybody else thinks it's worth, So, it's a good starting place. With us, Zillow could say it's worth 90 and we wouldn't pay 5 for it, right. Or vice versa. And so it's really, we really involve our acquisition managers really heavily with the disposition rep. So because we're focused more on what somebody else will pay for it than necessarily what the ARV is, right? So that's kind of how we've taken some of the black magic out of it a little bit, is we want to say, okay, we've got buyers that we know will pay about this for this kind of house in this area. Let's offer enough to make our profit less than that, So we focus more on what a buyer would pay for it. And if somebody else is willing to buy it, I'm kind of assuming it's probably a pretty good deal. So we just lock it up. And then at the same time, our people are also authorized to take flyers too. I tell them they can go buy the White House as long as they use my contract. So sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes we get it massively right. You just never know. And then we kind of evaluate it after the fact, but we're using, we're use realtors that, we work with to send us comps on stuff that we're going to flip. We want to make sure we have our numbers really dialed in on those. We get kind of CMAs from a couple different realtors for every project that we ever close on. But other than that, we kind of use the same tools that everybody else probably uses, Zillow, and looking at houses that have sold in the neighborhood on the MLS and that kind of thing, and kind of getting a little range of ARVs. And then, guessing the repairs is pretty easy. We have a little calculator we use that's, paint, carpet is this much per foot, that kind of thing. And then we pad it up a little bit and make our offer. But we're kind of offering at such a low percentage that, it's almost always works out, in a good way. So, that's one key, I think, especially in a small market, is buying really deep. And because the market's not as fluid and dynamic, and so you have to be really cautious on what you pay for something, and you need to buy it as deeply as possible. But it's also possible to buy deeper because you don't have as much competition fighting for that same deal either.
That's a really, really good point. It really is. And, I'm really glad you shared that about the ARV and about the repairs, because we do all of ours over the phone, right? You mentioned earlier that the last thing you gave up was actually doing acquisitions. I still do all of our acquisitions right now, right? I mean, I've got guys that do, that tee it up for me. I call them setters. They tee it up for me, but I get on the phone in 10 to 20 minutes. I got a deal, right? So, but that value is hard to determine, not only in a small market, but anywhere. But if you buy deep enough, you're going to make money. You know what your buyers are willing to pay, right? You're going to make money, which is really, really good.
Exactly. And, we're not opposed to buying over the phone. And I think it's a cool model. I've really looked into it. It's probably a lot more scalable than what I'm doing, in a way, because you don't have to have a physical presence in each area. But, what I've seen is that face to face, we can really dig in deep on the motivation. And, it's pretty easy for me to hang up on a telemarketer, but it's harder for me to kick somebody out of my house that's sitting on my couch that won't get up. Right. And that's kind of our philosophy, is we don't leave without a contract or a restraining order. And, so
love it.
So we're pretty, and not in a bad way. Our like one of our reps is just a good old country farm boy, or at least that's how he comes off, and so we're not intimidating or slick back hair car salesmen or anything like that. We're just real genuine people that are connecting, but we're not we know, as long as we know what we're offering is the right thing for the customer, we're not leaving until they say yes. So we're kind of trying to intrinsically believe what we're selling, so that we are acting in the customer's best interest. And that means, getting them to do the deal, because a lot of these folks, they need to do the deal. Like these are hoarder houses. These are, pet hoarders. These are, people that, has so much deferred maintenance to it,
right.
Safety hazards, bad tenants that are screwing up the neighborhood. You're killing your neighbor's property values. I mean, I think what we're doing is the right thing. It's morally right. It's ethically right. And so when you believe that, you kind of come off very confident, and you're going to get the deal, and that's why I like going face to face. I can close over the phone. Yeah, no doubt I have, but I can close really, really deep in person.
So, how many appointments do your guys run a week?
They're probably averaging 15 to 20 a week, some scheduled, and probably going on 15 of those. So they're pretty stacked up. Probably too many, to be honest. We probably could use one more acquisition rep if that level of appointments stayed the same.
That's good, man. That's good. So tell us a little bit about some advantages and disadvantages of being in a small market.
Well, so I'll start off with the disadvantages. The market isn't as dynamic; it's not as fluid, right? Which, like a share of Coca-Cola stock is worth whatever it is, $100 today. It's maybe it's 1 cent different when I click sell on E-Trade, right? Because there's an extremely efficient market to gobble up that, right? Well, real estate is a super inefficient market, but that also means that there's a huge arbitrage opportunity between, what I can buy it for and what I can sell it for, because, the value to you isn't the same as the value to me, and it isn't the same as the value to the end buyer. So, as long as we can identify those arbitrage opportunities, then we win. That hurts us in a small market because there's not as many buyers and the prices aren't running up and it's not as crazy. It also hurts us that we don't have as much appreciation normally, which really hurts with a seller, because like if you're in Tampa and you bought a house $100,000 15 years ago, that thing is worth 200 now. I could still pay you 100 as a wholesaler. You could still probably even make a profit on it, right?
Right.
If you're the seller. Well, here, that $100,000 house they bought 15 years ago is probably worth 120. So now I can only pay you 60. So you're having to rationalize a huge loss that you're taking on the house still.
Sure.
So that's a big objection that we have to overcome, a really big objection. And I think that's really applicable to small markets. And you don't really have that same thing in a market that's doubled or tripled in the last 20 years.
Right.
Now, the advantage is there's a lot less sophisticated competition, chasing the same deals. So you're not having to necessarily fight as hard, and you can be more aggressive with how you buy. You can walk away, from a deal over a couple $1,000 that you would never even think twice about doing in a hot market or a big market, because 10 other people are on their way. But we can do that because we know that nobody else is on their way. It's also good because the sellers know that it's not a hot market, and so that therefore we can scoop up better deals. They're more motivated to sell to us because there's less options. So there's some really good advantages and really big disadvantages as well. I think over time I've bought in hot markets before, and we're doing a couple deals in like Pensacola, which is still a small market but hotter, next to us, and it's much hotter and it's harder to buy, but it's easier to sell. So it's kind of it kind of cuts both ways. I felt like we're really good at marketing and sales, so I wanted to focus on getting a lot of properties, a lot of opportunities, and then let's focus on how to sell those opportunities. So we spent a lot of time on the disposition side on how we market these things, how we build our buyers list, how we kind of are a part of the community. We started a RIA group so we could actually sell our properties into that group a lot, and convince buyers that they're good deals, because they cash flow, right? But you got to kind of create a little bit of a feeding frenzy in a way. So we do that with events and really building up our buyers list in that way. So being in a small market, you kind of have to focus more on the people and the community and that kind of thing if you really want to be successful.
That's really good, man. That's good advice. Good advice. Jan, you shared a ton of really, really good information, man. I really, really appreciate that. Do you have any parting words or anything else you'd like to share? If you want to give out any contact info or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. Just the last words is kind of about massive action, right? Like I've gotten to where I've gotten in life, and you've probably gotten to where you've gotten in life to where you want to be, because you took a risk and you took a chance and you did it lots of times, and you did it over and over and over again. And you did it when everybody told you it was a bad idea, and, your back's to the wall and you didn't quit. And so we really believe in massive action. And to me, that's extremely important in this is, try out new ideas, take some risks, take some flyers, see what happens. But, the biggest thing is getting started, getting going, getting up when you fall down, just always moving forward, to me, is really, really important. And that's probably the best business advice I've ever gotten and ever really, thought about it. And it applies to every business, but real estate especially, because, man, you get your teeth knocked out every day from some new problem. And, being able to kind of pull your big kid britches back up and get going is really important. So the massive action to me is really important. It's kind of a big kick that we're on right now. So that's really important. And just to close out, I'd love to link up with anybody that's, an investor. Social media is the best way. Facebook, Jarrod Irby on Facebook, IRBYHomebuyers.com is our website. I'll share my email with you. Maybe you can put it in the notes. You're welcome to link up with me. I do have a little real estate event coming up in early May or mid-May. It's called Empire Forge Mastermind. So we're kind of focused on, I'm focused on building an empire for my family, and I want to see other people kind of do the same thing. I know you do some stuff like that too. So I've got that and do a little coaching and stuff like that. So yeah, social media is the best way, and IRBYHomebuyers.com or EmpireForgeMastermind.com.
Sounds great, man. I really, really appreciate you being on. It's been a lot of great information, and I know it's going to be one of the greatest shows that we've done because you did share a lot of detailed information. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Larry, for having me on, buddy.
Man, no problem at all. Thanks a lot. Take care.
You too.